Hey friends, this is Keith DeMello. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about the requirements to be a private pilot in Canada, as well as some of the costs associated with it. Stay tuned. In order to become a private pilot in Canada, you have to complete several training requirements, of which is to complete 45 hours of in-class ground school training and then obtain a score of 60% on the private pilot written exam. You also need to pass a Category 3 medical, and finally you need to complete 45 hours of in-flight flying training. Of those 45 hours, 17 hours is dual, that is time you fly with an instructor, 12 hours solo, also known as pilot in command time, 5 hours of instrument flight time. That is time that you fly just by looking at the instruments. It's important to know how to fly just by using your instruments in case you find yourself flying inadvertently into a cloud situation. You need to be able to know where's up and where's down and be able to get out of that situation. So the minimum requirements is 5 hours of instrument flight time and 3 hours of cross-country time solo, where you will be taking the airplane from point A, which is your flight school, and flying it to a distance far away, point B, and log that as cross-country time. Now let's look at some of the advantages of being a private pilot. It's actually an exciting time when you get your private pilot's license because you can actually take your friends and family flying. You can fly all the way in Canada, in the United States, and it's basically a license to have fun. The most amount of passengers you can take in these type of airplanes is 3 passengers, so it'll be yourself plus 3 other passengers. Now what you cannot do with a private pilot's license, and that's why people train to a commercial pilot's license standard afterwards, is that you cannot fly for hire. So you cannot take people flying and charge money for those flights. In order to do so, you'll actually need to obtain a commercial pilot's license. There's a lot more training involved, and when you have that kind of license, you can actually apply for a job as a pilot. Well, now that we've covered the requirements of a private pilot as well as the advantages, let's dig into the costs. These costs are based on 65 hours of flight training. You know, at the beginning of the video, I mentioned you need a minimum of 45 hours of flight training. Well, on average, students take 65 hours to complete their private pilot's license. So these costs are based on the average of 65 hours of flight training. If you do the training in lesser time, that's a bonus. But out of all the students that I've come across over the years, 65 hours is the sweet spot. You also give yourself a higher chance of passing the flight test on the first try when you have more experience going into the flight test. So let's move on to the costs. Instead of giving you one grand total number, I'm going to break down the costs for you. We're going to start off with the dual and solo hours together. Like I said, the dual hours is hours you fly with a flight instructor, and solo hours is hours that you fly by yourself to build time. Then we're going to go into the cost of the briefings. Before the flight, you do a pre-flight briefing where you talk about what you're going to do in your exercise coming up. And then after the flight, you do a post-flight briefing where the instructor and you go over the things that you did well and the things that you could improve upon. We're going to talk about the cost of the flight test and finally the costs of the exams and the books that you'll require. Now keep in mind, these costs are based on the cost for international students, which usually differs from the cost if you were flying as a local Canadian citizen. First, let's look at the cost for renting a Cessna 172, which is a 4-seater airplane. The total dual and solo cost together is $23,000. The cost for briefings, that is the pre-flight briefing before your flight and the post-flight briefing, is $2,300. The cost for the flight test with an examiner and the fees is roughly $700. And the cost for the exams and the books is roughly $500. So if you add up all of those together, it gives you an average cost of $26,500. That is the cost including taxes. Another thing about these costs is that it's based on the Cessna 172 model. That is a 4-seater airplane. So that's you as the pilot plus 3 other passengers. If you fly a 2-seater airplane, which is the Cessna 152 model, you can expect the price to be significantly cheaper. That's personally what I did. It comes to about $30 cheaper per hour. And after completing my private pilot's license, I did an airplane checkout with a flight instructor, and then I was able to fly the 4-seater airplane. Maybe that's something you can consider as well with your flight school if they allow that. You can also reduce those costs if you fly more consistently throughout the week. Someone who flies 1 time a week is going to require more training in the end versus someone who flies, say, 3 times or 4 times a week, because information is retained that much easier the more often you fly. And trust me, when you first start out your flight training, I recommend flying at least 3 times per week. Now, don't be concerned if you actually go above the minimum 45 hours of flight training that's recommended. I've seen students who have achieved their PPL at
75 hours, 85 hours, even as high as
100 hours of flying. And yes, it did take them a little longer to get it, but once you get it, you get it. You don't forget. And that skill carries with you through the rest of your career. Another reason why you shouldn't be discouraged if it takes extra time to get your license is those extra hours that you do fly counts towards your commercial pilot's license that you're going to use later on. You need a total of 200 hours of flight training in order to become a commercial pilot. So those extra hours you use to get your pilot's license is not actually wasted. It's actually counted towards your commercial pilot's license. So in summary, it costs $26,500 to get your private pilot's license in Canada. Keep in mind that these are average costs. You need to message several flight schools and then determine which flight school you're going to apply to. Also, I wouldn't go with a flight school that gives you the cheapest flight training costs. There's other factors that are involved in choosing a flight school that could be equally, if not more important than just the cost of training. I made a video, if you can refer to it in the description below, on how to choose a flight school in Canada. I recommend you check that out. If you like this type of video, comment below that it helped you, as well as give me any suggestions for any future topics. And don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, hit the like button, and I'll see you next time.